So you mentioned that you have you teach, and then after that you get a lot of time to do a lot of stuff for Aurat March. What exactly is the kind of stuff that you do for them, and what are your responsibilities for the march itself?
So the thing is, because we're a community-based movement, so that means that whoever is volunteering for Aurat March that year pretty much does everything. So that's organizing, mobilizing, social media activity, performances, figuring out how to talk to mainstream media, and then also planning, negotiating. This year, I'm focusing a little more on mobilizing. So that means, for example, today I went to a campus. We had like a listening circle. In next week, I might go to give a talk at a university.
Oh, that's really cool.
So work like that, but also we are doing "The Rapist Is You" anthem this year as well. So there's a lot of practicing for that.
I'm sorry, I don't know what that is.
So
What
that
exactly
is
is that?
essentially that started from Chile, and it's like a song and a dance. It's more like a chant than a
Right.
song, and it's called "The Rapist Is You." And so these women in Chile came out to protest, and they kind of did this. They chanted, and there was a dance as well. And then basically, lots of feminists from different countries, translated the song into their own
Versions,
languages
yeah.
and did the dance. So in Pakistan, we are going to do a similar thing this year.
Oh,
So we're
this
really
time.
excited about that. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
really cool. So you talked about the feminist movement throughout the world. Pakistan ki jo feminist movement hai. Feminism in Pakistan is used as a slur or a taunt quite often, like mostly by males in Pakistani society. Why do you think that is? Is there a reason for it? Why is it so maligned?
I think there are many reasons for it, and I think that I mean, it's there. The first argument is that feminism is a Western kind of idea, which I personally disagree with. I think feminism has been part of our history and our culture for many, many years. Maybe we haven't called it feminism. Yes, feminism is an English word, but that doesn't mean the idea of feminism is foreign to us. Simply because that cannot exist. Like that, I just refuse to believe that there has been no feminism in Pakistan, and especially because I think we adopted the word maybe later, but these ideas of resistance have definitely been a big part of our history. So there is that. The first thing is that there is this idea that this is a foreign thing, and this is not in our culture. These are not our values. I think the second thing is that whatever women do is monitored and surveilled and criticized and judged. And ideas of feminism are thought of as scary because there is this idea that a feminist is just going to upend everything, or that she is not going to respect the values and culture of a country. I find that to be very untrue. I think, for example, in Aurat March organizing, we are many different kinds of feminists.
Yeah.
We come from many different classes. We have very different beliefs. You know, I wouldn't say that I agree with everybody on the volunteering team this year. And why should we agree? Like,
Yeah.
we are also different from each other. But the fact of the matter is that feminism is such a broad and beautiful thing that we can actually all work together, put our differences aside, or even talk about our differences and really set out to create some real change. So I think that there's also this idea, this fear of women getting together and really doing something. Like, I noticed that whenever a lot of our meetings were in public places, so in parks, so we'd be like lots of women and people from like gender and sexual minorities sitting together in a circle, and men would pass by and they would just be like, you could tell they were like, what are these women doing?
Yeah, they were
Like, what
uncomfortable.
are they doing? And it was like they were getting agitated because even this idea of women sitting in a public
Yeah.
space and kind of, you have no idea what we're talking about really, but it strikes like a kind of fear in the hearts of people. So yeah, I think to answer your question, there are many misconceptions about feminism,
Yeah.
but I think there's also very purposeful, like there's a very purposeful narrative being built to also keep that fear secure and in place,
Yeah,
and to keep women in their place.
Yeah, that's
as a
very
result.
true. Yeah, no. So one of the reasons why we wanted to do this was, excuse me, was because these misconceptions exist, and because feminism is so maligned and so misunderstood, that it would be really better for everyone on both sides to for you guys to have your voices heard, and people on the other side who probably are who want to who are reasonable enough to hear and try to understand this, even if we try and get one person to understand the feminist movement or Aurat March, I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, that would
So
be
that's
super
one of
cool.
the reasons why. And thanks so much, because you've joined us here to hopefully do that. And you talked about the feminist movement existing, maybe not in those words, but existing in our history. Do you have any like examples or any like places in history you could look back and maybe tell us where feminism propped up in your eyes? Like the one I can remember was probably in the 80s under Zia, so the Women's Action Forum and all of that. So do you have any such examples or places that you look for in the past?
I think WAF is a great start, and WAF has done really important work, and we owe so much to WAF. And even with these marches, WAF has been so instrumental. But I would also really like to call attention to kind of working class women, so women that agitate to create trade unions in this country, for example, peasants, so female farmers who get paid so much less than their male counterparts and who come out to protest things like food security, things like crop security, people that we don't think of when we first think of a feminist, because unfortunately in this country we think of a rich English speaking woman with a foreign degree.
Yeah, and short hair for some
and
reason.
short hair.
I don't get what that
always
is.
Short hair. But actually, if you ask me, I see feminist resistance all around us. I see feminist resistance. My dadi, who was not an educated woman, she in Karachi started a fish and chips restaurant practically by herself on Tariq Road, and it was the most successful fish and chips restaurant for a while, and she did it entirely by herself. And if you would have asked her, are you feminist, she would have been like, no, but actually her life was, I think, lived according to feminist principles. Like, why shouldn't she be thought of as a feminist?
Yeah.
Right? So I think just because we don't name something doesn't necessarily mean that that's not what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the, I think, taking that example, if we went to someone and told them कि ये हुआ fish and chips wali, that she started on her own, they would be like, great, women should do that, that's great. But if you would say कि a feminist did that, then it would be like, you know what,
that's true.
Yeah, feminist, I can't really buy into that. Maybe it's just the word itself, I really don't get it. And even if it is a Western word or a Western concept, let's believe that for a second. Why must that be so bad when the entire concept of feminism is something that's so intrinsic to the things that women go through? So before we get into what actually feminism is and maybe clear the air for a few people who might not know, we talked about, Zia's era and Islamization. One of the things that really is relevant here is how do we align feminism and Islam, because that's one of the things that Aurat March is, talked about in light of Islam. Like, so Islamic values and all of that are very relevant in the discussion. So how do you align the two? Can you be a feminist and a good Muslim at the same time?
I think you certainly can be. I think that there is, personally, I'm not what you would call an Islamic feminist, but there are many Islamic feminists. There are some Islamic feminists who have done amazing, fantastic work, such as Amna Chaudhry.
Yeah.
She's a very popular name. There are also others. There's a lot of scholarship, but not just scholarship. I think that what we need to understand is that if Islamic interpretations are it's such a sensitive issue in this country, that actually the thing is that even if we say that, our feminism has space for Islam, or our Islam has space for feminism, this means that we are reinterpreting things.
Yeah.
We are going against a certain mainstream interpretation of, maybe the Quran or Sunnah, Hadith, and this is not a conversation that a lot of people are willing to have. But at the end of the day, of course, the Quran is open to interpretation. I will also like to say that, people bring up the placard, Mera Jism, Meri Marzi, a lot.
Yeah.
But my question is that how people say this is un-Islamic because of the whole idea of a wife's duty to her husband. But I think we were talking about this, the volunteers, the other day, and we were saying that the thing is that why is this not acceptable within Islamic discourse? Agar Allah ne aapko ye jism diya hai, so isn't it your duty to protect it, for example? I mean, what I'm just saying is that these things can be interpreted in so many different ways, and they can be interpreted in ways that do align with many people's religious beliefs. But the fact of the matter is that it is such a sensitive issue. I think that people are not willing to make space for it.
Yeah, definitely.
And that is the real issue. I don't think the issue is that feminism is un-Islamic, or I don't think the real issue is that the feminists that organize or volunteer for Aurat March are un-Islamic. I think the real issue is that there is a certain rigidity when it comes to
Yeah,
interpretations
definitely.
of Islam in this country.
Yeah, so there's a lot of intolerance, and there's a lot of people who are not educated about Islam, but they just think they're Islamic or are Islamic, and they've been told things and passed down, and that's their Islam. But and this is something that, because I would also, align myself with the feminist movement, and 3 or 4 years ago when I started off in university, I was like, okay, so these problems definitely exist, and feminism is one of, like, is a thing that's going on, and I align myself with that. But obviously I'm also a Muslim, and because there's obviously a discord. You have questions in your mind कि
Yeah.
Islam mein, like, there's obviously a disconnect of sort, or some questions raised by feminism might not be answered by Islam and all of that. So I tried searching for an answer about, let's say, economic freedom in Islam, and what I came across was really surprising, because not only are women allowed to work in Islam, whatever they earn is theirs to keep. They have, like, it is theirs. In-laws nahi le sakte, husband nahi le sakta, bacche bhi nahi le sakte.
Yes.
It is hers. But unfortunately, a lot of Islam in theory is not practiced in our society, and there's a lot of intolerance around even criticizing people ke, yeah, maybe you're not doing something right, or
Yeah.
maybe you're not interpreting right, and then फिर वो सारे blasphemy और उसके charge लग जाते हैं, but that's a whole
Yeah,
other
so
thing.
it's also a sensitive issue in many ways,
Yeah.
as you can imagine.
Yeah, definitely. So for people who might not know, or people who think feminism is just a woman in short hair going around, screaming or shouting or whatever, and that's totally fine, but that is the image that's out there. What is feminism in your eyes?
I think it's just really impossible to define, to be honest. I think that I cannot really define feminism for anyone else. And I think that what feminism really is that it's hope. So it's hope for a better tomorrow, that we come together every year to have this march. But yeah, we are doing it not because we think that all of our demands will be met within the year. We are doing it because this is an exercise in hope. This is an exercise in desire, and by that I mean that we are calling for a restructuring of society, which is a big thing to demand. We understand, but you see, in the coming together for this march, we learn so much, we unlearn so much. We are so united in our hope, and for some time our dreams become aligned with each other's. And I think for me that is truly feminism. I think that the patriarchy is individualistic, it is capitalistic, and it is imperialistic. But the reason that why I think feminism is such a strong resistance to it is because it allows us to hope, and it allows us to dream as a whole people.
Yeah.
So not just for me or not just for you, but for us.
Yeah.
And I think that's the real magic of it.
Yeah, that's great, because even the thought, like, even mobilizing together, makes people lose their shit. And if people were to even lose their shit for half the other stuff that's going on in this country, like, all sorts of sexual assault cases, child molestation, then we'd be a pretty better society. But I guess people have their priorities. What can you say? So one of the other things, apart from like desi feminism and all of that, is a critique on radical feminism. So, and the critique is such that it says that, and this is not my point of view, I'm just like telling you how it is, lashing out or fighting against those on the other side, basically men, will only antagonize them further and push them away, or iska end pe koi fayda nahi hona. Both sides will just end up hating each other, and it's better to engage in discussion and bring about change through discourse. Do you think this critique is fair? Where do you lie on this?
I think, to be honest, this is a critique that people use often and exercise often. And my answer to this is usually that this basically dismisses the anger of women. That women are really angry and women are really tired. Women and gender and sexual minorities, as men, male privilege protects you from so many things.
Absolutely.
Even if you are not necessarily a cis-het man, if you have some kind of male privilege, there is a definite protection. You are validated by society. It's easier for you to move around in the world. There's so many obstacles that are not obstacles for you. The thing is that I really believe that men can educate themselves. We live in the era of the internet.
Yep.
And I think that I learned many things about feminism through the internet.
Same. Yeah.
I think that a lot of the time when men are like asking women to engage with them in a debate, they are basically trying to put them down, and they are trying to reason with them in a way that's very condescending,
Yeah.
because they are speaking from a place of privilege. I think what men should be doing, which is a big ask, is that they should be offering their support and allyship as opposed to getting women to explain exactly why they're angry. Like,
Yeah.
aapko nazar nahi aa raha ki hame kyun itna gussa aa raha hai? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I think it's not helpful to ask women to engage with you in like debate, or to be like, oh, can you explain this concept to me? We have the internet, there's so much scholarship. You want to learn. If you actually want to learn, I think learning comes from earnestness. Learning comes from a desire to unlearn.
Yeah.
If you don't want to unlearn, then how can you learn anything new? That's what I think
Sincerity
is
honi
the
chahiye, yeah.
there's no sincerity in
Yeah.
that. And there are some men who earnestly do want to learn, and I understand that. But the thing is, what male privilege does, it kind of makes you feel like everyone owes you an explanation, or that just because you are a man, this needs to be explained to you. But the thing is that if you can find it out yourself, you know, this is a lot of labor for people. Like, for example, right now we're like setting up Aurat March. Now, to ask us to reply to every comment, every nasty comment we get on social media is just unreasonable, because we're
Yeah.
all tired. This is a lot of
Yeah.
labor, right? We have to do a lot of negotiating, a lot of emotional labor. I think that of course things like reasoned debate are, you know, we in a democratic society, very, very important. But I think that this idea of having to convince men that feminism is like a legitimate thing,
Yeah.
it's those men who need convincing are not going to be convinced.
Yeah.
That's what I feel.
Yeah, that's fair, because like I know I myself like 3 or 4 years ago didn't know much, and I think the whole process of where I am right now is like started off with me unlearning or deconstructing a lot of the stuff that was in my mind, even if it was subliminal,
Yeah.
even if it wasn't active.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so why do I think, or why does society think for a woman to do X is wrong, or a woman to
Yeah.
do Y is wrong? But wait a second, if my friend who's male smokes, that's fine. But if
Yeah.
so, all of that, so that was a process. And you're right, it takes a lot of sincerity, a lot of, you know, earnestness to get to the other side. But I guess that's something that we'll have to engage with on a personal level, and that's something that is our responsibility.
Definitely.
And it's not women's responsibility to
I
spoon feed
think
it
this
to
is
us.
one area where male allies can really lend their support. Personally, this is what I feel is whenever a male ally asks me that, you know, how can we help, I would definitely say, talk to other men. And when other men say really toxic things as jokes, or when they say things about their girlfriends or their sisters, or whatever, you know, it is that those kind of toxic things creep in as jokes or as stories or whatever, I think that that's an important space that men can take up, because you have a certain privilege, and I think that would definitely help. Like, I think that would be the best help in many ways for male allies to take up that emotional labor.
Yeah, so the way the world works, as screwed up as it is, that men would be more conducive to listening to other men. Even
there's
if
also
yeah,
that. There's
yeah,
also
so
that.
rather they'd be like, nahi, usse baat nahi honi, she's a
Yeah.
feminist. If like my friend was telling me about something, I'd probably be in a better position to listen. So moving on to the to Aurat March itself, is there a one or two liner that could fully summarize Aurat March? Because the reason I'm asking is 2 days ago, my manager, he like Aurat March ka topic chhid gaya, and he was like, "Ye Aurat March kya hai?" And I was like, okay, here we go. I'm gonna have to like have a debate with this guy. Okay, you know, this और end पे debate हुई 2 घंटे की, where me and this other guy, we were trying to convince him कि it's like this is their legitimate concerns, and he wasn't really like attacking us or debating. He was just like कि मुझे पता ही नहीं है क्या, like what is their agenda. So could you like sum it up in 1 or 2 lines for people who don't know?
I think the best way to really talk about this is to say that we this year the theme for Aurat March is Khud Mukhtari, which is kind of these ideas of independence and being like self-reliant. And so if we are coming together, you know, on this day to march for this, then we are marching for these ideas of kind of self-sufficiency or autonomy, basically, for autonomy. So in a way, Aurat March, it's very difficult to sum it up in 2 or 3 lines, but I would definitely say it's a march. We do it on Women's Day. It's like International Working Women's Day on 8th March, and we do it to demand our rights, but also to celebrate. I think that that's a very important thing, that we we take out this march to celebrate, feminism, womanhood, ideas of, protest, resistance. And you can interpret this in many different ways. Some people might come to Aurat March just because they would really like to be part of the celebration of it, and I know that lots of younger kind of students and all of these people really look forward to it, that, you can kind of come, you can write a placard, make a poster, come, there's lots of other people, it's like a celebration.
Yeah.
But I think that, to summarize it in 2 or 3 lines, we come together to protest against patriarchy, imperialism, corporate greed, neoliberalism, all in the name of feminism. And I think that that is maybe a succinct way to put it.
Yeah, that's great. So before the camera started rolling, we were talking about Charter of Demands and how each city has its own demands. Like, obviously the core issues are the same, but then every city is different in terms of the local culture and the needs that it might have. What about Lahore? How did you guys decide the Charter of Demands? Umer, could you pull up Aurat March's Twitter account for Lahore?
I can read out the demands to you. The
Sure.
2020 Charter of Demands, right? So basically, Aurat March Lahore demands a society without exploitative patriarchal structures. The theme for Aurat March Lahore 2020 is Khud Mukhtari, the right to control over economic resources, our bodies, the justice system, health, and education. So as you can see, demands that nobody would be opposed
it's
to.
out there, yeah.
Right? So our first demand is end of IMF-sponsored economic policies and budget cuts and immediate control of inflation of basic foodstuffs, whose burden is felt by working class women and gender and sexual minorities. Of course, this year there was so much inflation and everybody is talking about it. The reason that these demands are here is because we want to underline and emphasize that feminism speaks for all of these things. So even IMF-sponsored economic policies are a patriarchal problem.
Right.
Right? It's not, feminism isn't just this divide between men and women. The fact of the matter is that the patriarchy is killing all of us.
Yeah, that's
This
true.
is our moment. We need to get together. And I think that this recent government change and the kind of policies that have been since then is a real indication of that. 2 is we demand safe and equal workplaces through criminalization of discrimination, including the gender wage gap and provision of social services to ensure women and gender and sexual minorities' right to work. So 2 is basically right to work. 3, we demand that the minimum wage be increased to a living wage of rupees 40,000 to ensure a minimum life of dignity for all. Right? So up till now, we're talking about economics, essentially. Yeah. We demand that defamation laws be decriminalized and amendments passed to civil laws ensure that they are not used to silence survivors of sexual violence. Right? And then I'll just move a little ahead because there's quite a few.
Yeah, sure.
8 is we demand that concrete actions be taken by the state to curb child sex abuse and exploitation through effective laws, accountability, and early age education about consent. So those people who say that we don't talk about any real issues just need to read our charter or our manifesto to know that we actually are talking about what nobody would deny are the real issues.
Definitely.
In the country. We demand, number 10, we demand that campuses be demilitarized and surveillance of students in the name of security be ceased. Of course, it's a very big issue. I'm sure we all know what happened in the University of Balochistan recently, that women's bodies, and not just women's bodies, but all kinds of bodies. So bodies of minorities, especially if you're not from the correct region. So for example, if you're from Balochistan or if you are Pathan, then your body is being heavily surveilled by the state through campuses, and essentially your life is in danger.
Yeah. So how will you translate these demands into actionable or enforceable rules or practices? Because as you said, the first 3 points were on the economy, and that exists on a very macro level, and all of these engage with sort of different institutions.
Yes.
So is it just like, is the point to first raise awareness, and then it in itself is pretty
I think
important
for the march itself, I think the point is to raise awareness, but I think what is also very important for us is to show everybody that all of these demands go together, and that is very, very important. That we are not saying that we're feminists, so we're only going to talk about a certain kind of woman and a certain kind of problem, but actually that all of these problems are patriarchal problems. They are all together. So if you are experiencing crazy inflation, if you are being surveilled on campus, if you the countless problems that many of us have to negotiate every day, we would definitely say are problems that have been produced because of the patriarchy. As for steps being taken towards these things, because we are so many feminists, and lots of us work in law, economic policy, so on and so forth, and we are actively resisting these things in the everyday. But the march in itself is to show that all of these problems are interrelated, that we
Right.
all need to come together and fight for all of these problems. So yeah.
Yeah, that speaking of the reception that you guys got from last year, because last year I think was the main event, so to speak, because
Very big
you
march,
had
yeah.
one like in excuse me, 2018, but the one in 2019 really set the ball
It was
rolling.
very big, yeah.
For those who don't know, can you please explain what kind of criticism and backlash you guys received after last year's Aurat March?
Sure. I mean, we received threats. We received a lot of criticism. Mainstream media basically maligned us. Even, a lot of feminists, a lot of volunteers went on talk shows and were promptly shouted over. The big noise was about the placards, I believe. The big noise was about the placards because some people had brought provocative placards with them. And so there was a whole debate of like, okay, these placards are distracting from the main thing of the march. But the thing is that this year we have also decided that we are not going to censor placards. So what we have done is that we have told people, whoever wants to come, if you are carrying a provocative placard, it's likely your picture will be taken. It will be all over social media. It will come on TV. So please be careful. If you do not want that kind of attention, then think about what you are bringing to the march. Having said that, if someone brings a provocative placard, we will not be telling them that, you cannot use this. That completely goes against what we believe in. And of course, we stand for freedom of expression as well. So, yeah, but I think the main issue was the placards, the discourse.
Yeah, I
placards.
mean, it's pretty weird because the placards offended insecure people with huge egos but tiny characters. I mean, it was like really weird. A lot of people make sexual jokes masked as banter all the time, but whenever they receive it or they see it out there being made from the other side, they can't take it. And then the entire सारा जो मसला हुआ था after the Me Too movement was like, oh, हमारे jokes कहीं harassment ना बन जाएं. I mean, if the lines are that much blurred, your jokes are pretty
gray.
Yeah. So, I mean, placards about things that don't really even concern you directly, even though those jokes are directly made at certain...
But I think the placards, I mean, this is not just a problem of a few men. Like today in the staff room at my school, I was handing out flyers and this one woman started talking about the placards. And this is like a woman that teaches English at my school. And she was so against the Aurat March because of the placards. And I talked to her and I was like, it's just a placard that someone brought and it doesn't represent the whole march in any way. But the thing is, in a way, it does. Because even a single placard that got so much attention, in a way, I think it articulates in many ways the many problems of the patriarchy, that this placard can speak to so many people and can make them so uncomfortable that I think that also says a lot. And I found that to be very interesting because really nobody will ever talk about the other placards that, for example, say things that nobody would disagree with. But a provocative placard will always get attention because the media is...
They want to sell their papers.
What it is, yeah.
Those are the ones that get pictured and all of that.
Really, we should be criticizing the media and not the Aurat March.
Absolutely. I think the weirdest one was that people lost their shit over khana khud garam kar lo. I mean, is that so bad? Really, guys? Yeah. I mean, khana thoda sa, and there's a story behind it. So imagine your entire critique of the feminist movement was started way back in the 90s when women didn't even have the right to vote. वहाँ से शुरू हुई है, वो लगे हुए हैं जी हमें rights दें and all of that. And then this guy comes up and वो सब ठीक है. But I don't agree with this movement. This movement is trash because ये खाना खुद गरम करने वाला क्या scene है? Yeah. And you probably know this. There's a backstory behind that as well. Umer, could you pull up man kills wife over...
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So
I think we've used this as part of our research as well this year, that a man killed his wife because his food
because
was cold.
The dinner was cold. And
and in fact, I think... sorry, there's too many facts in my head right now, but a couple of months ago or last month, a man killed his sister as well over something similar.
I read something like this every other day. It's like...
So,
mad.
These are real problems, essentially. What I'm trying to say is that this is not just a spoiled and lazy wife who doesn't want to warm food for her husband, although of course that is completely justified as well.
Just
that
warm
people
should
food, man.
warm
their own food and cook their own food too. But actually, this is a serious issue.
Definitely. I mean, if people in Pakistan got offended even like 50% of what they of how much they got offended Aurat March at actual stuff happening in the country.
Yeah.
Like every day you read so much shit happening in this country.
Yeah.
If they even directed half of that hate or outrage towards that, I think things would be a lot
it
better.
would be fantastic.
Yeah, but like obviously not. That's so criticism and hate for Aurat March wasn't just subjected to, yeah, there it is. So criticism and right. Wow. Is this the one you're
this is
talking
after
about?
argument.
Yeah, so this is pretty
I'm not
recent.
sure
This
if
is November 20th.
2019, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so this kind of stuff just happens a lot. So there is this one critique, and this is probably because the media only focused on specific placards, but the critique says that Aurat March exists inside a class bubble, so to speak. So you only have people from, let's say, universities like LUMS, LSE, women from privileged backgrounds, backgrounds that might be more privileged than, say, a working class man in Pakistan, for example. And that's their entire critique. Do you think this criticism is fair कि अपने bubble के अंदर की problems की बात हो रही है or not?
No, I don't think this is a fair criticism, and I don't think that I think that this is a lazy criticism. That is what actually this is, because I've understood. I haven't been an activist for very many years, but in my few years of working in the field, I have realized that people who make this criticism are lazy. So essentially the thing is that yes, there are definitely some elite women working in organizing or volunteering for Aurat March. Now, being an elite woman is definitely a problem on some levels, but it also means that a woman like me, I can devote my time, my money, and my resources where other women cannot. And that doesn't mean that I take up the whole stage and say this march is about me, but it basically means that I can lend support, I can give resources, I can give time, I can do interviews. If anyone is going to face any backlash, it should be a woman like me, right? Whose parents are aware that she, does this kind of work, who doesn't have to compromise when it comes to money or other resources. I can actually do this work without fearing for my life or my security because I am privileged. And there are privileged women that participate in Aurat March, but every year we grow, every year we get more and more inclusive. This year, gender and sexual minorities have played a huge part in volunteering, organizing, mobilizing. It has been absolutely fantastic. We have learned so much. We are reaching out to working class women. And also the thing is that I think this idea of elitism is very complicated. So basically you see me and a woman who speaks good English and she went to a good university and all of that. But class is a very complicated thing. A lot of women who appear to be a certain way are actually financially independent. You don't know who their parents are, what their background is, or what their limitations are. The thing is, patriarchy is so insidious that even a privileged woman has so many problems, like mobility problems, permission problems. There's always shadi pressure. There's innumerable things. So I think that, again, as every year the march will get bigger, every year there's going to be more people, every year it's going to get more and more inclusive. Movements take time. Definitely you can say that, yes, elite women might have started this, but that's because they could start it, right? And if you are elite, if you are privileged, the best thing you can do is use your resources in this way. That doesn't mean you act like Jamila and just speak for other people all the time. It means that you say, hey, I have space, I have resources, I can make certain personal sacrifices, let me take these risks because not everybody can take them, and then more people will join because I can create a platform. So
no, that's great. Yeah, absolutely. So what could you give us a few details about Aurat March for anyone who's listening, where it's happening, what time and all of that, so that people who want to come can join in? And we'll obviously link the profiles and the events in the description below.
Thank you. So Aurat March will be on 8th March. It will start at 11 o'clock. There is a cricket match later on that day, so we have to start early this year, 11 a.m. And it will run till 3.
Cricket comes home.
It will be on Mall Road. The route has not been confirmed yet, but as soon as the route is confirmed, I will let you know. You can update.
Okay, sure.
Because we would like to give a confirmed route, obviously, otherwise people are going to get confused. But definitely Mall Road as last year and at 11 o'clock, and we will wrap up by 3. So please come, bring your family, bring your friends. It's going to be amazing. We're also excited, and let's do this.
yeah, that's great. I think one thing that we should also really encourage, the house help that we have.
Yes.
We should bring them along as well, because
Definitely.
I think the more inclusive it is, the better, like you said.
Definitely.
before we wrap this up, thank you so much for
No
your
worries.
time,
It's my
Amna.
pleasure.
I
yeah.
sincerely hope women get all the rights that they are striving for.
Thank you so much.
And I really, really hope that Pakistanis in general become more perceptive and considerate and less spiteful and bitter about others, which
it's
we
me?
are, guys.
You
Yeah.
just give this a shout out as well to
Oh, yeah. So, as you can probably see on your screen, Aurat March
This is for
is
Aurat
having
Azadi March, actually.
or just something else.
Yeah, sorry.
I mean, we could probably plug them as well. Like,
Yeah, no,
smash the
plug them
patriarchy
too.
whichever way you want. But like,
Aurat March Lahore.
I think this is the Aurat March Lahore page. But I think their funding is open. Yeah, is there a way? Yeah, because you guys had a fundraiser.
We had a
Yeah, so-
fundraising gig. Yeah, we do. We are currently accepting donations. So if you would like to donate, please reach out.
Okay.
You can find us on social media.
Sure. Do you guys have a link you could give us? We could plug it in the description below.
Yes,
for,
I
like-
can give you a
yeah.
link. I can
Okay,
give you a link.
that's great. Aurat March 2020, 8th March, Godspeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
You say Godspeed. You at least
Please, good luck.
subscribe or like the video or.
Yeah, वो थोड़ा confusing हो गया था because remember when we talked about कि we don't have to like have a proper intro or something.
You think, I mean, ending is all.
Yeah, I know. But